Hey there, welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe and share this video with someone who needs a little boost today. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into it. It was Tuesday evening when I got home from work and noticed a manila envelope wedged between the storm door and the frame. Divorce papers. Nicole had finally decided to make it official. I stood on the porch, thumbing through the stack, the legal terminology blending into one long blur. Petition, property division, marriage dissolution. None of it surprised me. What did? That she didn't have the courage to hand them over in person. I was still standing there, flipping pages, when a pair of headlights swept across the driveway. A black SUV pulled in, and out stepped Rowan Keats, the man Nicole had apparently chosen as my successor. He strolled toward me like he owned the place, hands buried in his coat pockets, wearing that smug, know-it-all smirk he was known for. Rowan's reputation in town was infamous. Couldn't keep a job, never put his name on a lease, always leeching off whoever was naive enough to let him stay. He fancied himself slick, but anyone paying attention saw him for what he really was, a parasite dressed in charm, mistaking boldness for substance. "Nicole says you need to be out by Friday," he said, nodding toward the envelope in my hand. "Might want to start looking for a new place." I stared at him, really took him in. Taller than me, slender, shoulders back like he believed he'd already won. "You heard me, Arthur," he added. "This isn't your fight anymore. Don't drag it out. Just pack up and leave." I let the silence stretch, long enough to make him fidget. Long enough for him to second-guess what I was thinking. Then I gave him the only response that felt right. "All right." He blinked. He'd been bracing for a scene, maybe shouting, maybe fists, at the very least, resistance. But I turned quietly, unlocked the door, and walked inside without a word. Before closing it, I looked back at him once, calm, detached, unshaken. Then I shut the door and locked it. That night I started making phone calls. First to Vivian Cross, the lawyer who had handled my grandfather's estate, including this house, when it passed to me. Then to the bank, just to ensure all joint accounts were properly separated and everything on my side was locked down. By the time I turned off the lights, I had the outline of a strategy. Nicole and Rowan thought they were cornering me. But what they didn't know was the deed had been in my name alone since day one, filed and recorded 3 years before Nicole ever wore that engagement ring. And I had no plans of leaving. Wednesday arrived, and with it came a strange calm. No bitterness, no fury, just a clear sense of purpose. People lose control when they let emotions lead, and I wasn't about to lose control. If they wanted to play a game, I'd make sure I was the one setting the rules. First step, lock everything down. I reset the garage door codes, reconfigured the security system, and revoked every smart home access point tied to Nicole's devices. Legally, she might still have partial access until the divorce finalized, but functionally, I'd sealed every entrance. Around midday, I had a short, formal message delivered to her through my lawyer. "You may collect your personal belongings this Saturday at 2 p.m. I will be present. Rowan Keats is not permitted on the property. If additional time is needed, please coordinate through counsel." 10 minutes later, Nicole skipped protocol and texted me directly. "You can't control who I bring." "I can control who enters my home," I wrote back. "You're being petty." "No," I replied. "I'm being exact." She didn't answer after that. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, spreading out the divorce packet her attorney had prepared. The language painted a picture, as if I were the one moving out, as if this were an even split. But the documents only confirmed what I already understood. This property had never been hers. And now it was time to remind them of that. Saturday came faster than expected. At exactly 2 p.m., Nicole pulled into the driveway. Rowan was with her, walking like a man ready to claim what didn't belong to him. Tucked under his arm was a folder. So this wasn't just about personal effects. I opened the door but stayed firmly in place. "Nicole," I said, "you're welcome to come in." Alone, Rowan stood firm on the front walkway, that same smug grin plastered across his face like it gave him some kind of authority. "You can't just kick me out," he insisted. "I've been staying here over a month. That gives me tenant rights." I stared at him, expression flat. "Staying here?" I repeated. "You mean sneaking in when I'm at work? Crashing on my couch like a stray? That's not living here, Rowan." "You were never invited. You don't belong here." He didn't argue, just silently reached into a folder and handed me a sheet of paper. It was neatly typed, full of legal phrasing, with his name across the top. A so-called declaration of residency, written by Rowan for Rowan. I didn't need to skim past the first few lines to know it was nonsense. Just another one of his make-believe power moves, assuming the format would fool someone into thinking it was legitimate. Nicole crossed her arms tightly and snapped, "Arthur, stop being difficult. He has rights." I didn't raise my voice. "Then he's welcome to assert those rights in court." Rowan stepped a bit closer, lowering his voice like he had some ace up his sleeve. "Well," he said with fake casualness, "I actually brought someone who can explain all that to you." From the passenger seat of their SUV, a man stepped out. Mid-40s, thin, suit wrinkled, briefcase scuffed at the edges. He introduced himself as Gerard Latham, Rowan's lawyer. Latham jumped straight into a monologue, confidently reciting housing regulations and claiming Rowan had a legal right to stay unless formally evicted. I almost laughed, but kept my composure. Instead, I handed him a document of my own. The property deed. My name, notarized and dated, proving I'd owned the house years before Nicole and I were even married. And then, for good measure, I added, "Also, here's footage from 2 nights ago, Rowan trying to pry open the back door after I updated the security codes." As he watched the video, Latham's face lost its color. Nicole's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowed. Rowan muttered something bitter, a half-formed threat that fell flat. "This isn't over," he grumbled. I took a step back, starting to close the door. "No," I said evenly, "but now it's starting to make sense." The lock clicked behind me. 2 days later, I got home from work and noticed something was off. The garage door was wide open. Odd, considering I'd already changed the access code. I parked in the drive, walked into the house, and stopped cold. Nicole was in the kitchen like nothing had changed, casually humming as she stirred onions in a skillet. She looked up with mild surprise, as if this was just any other night. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She gave a little shrug. "I still live here. The divorce isn't finalized yet." I reminded her, "You already served the paperwork. And until the court signs off," she said coolly, "I still have the right to be here. You can't make me leave." I didn't argue. Technically, maybe. But Rowan's not walking back into this house. Her smile faltered. "You can't dictate who I spend time with," she said. "I'm not trying to," I replied calmly. "But I won't let anyone break in again." That shut the conversation down. The next morning, something else was off. My nightstand had been cleared. Gone were my tablet and my smartwatch. I checked the security footage. Sure enough, 6 a.m., Nicole on camera, walking out to her car with both devices under her arm. I called Officer Elias Hart. By lunchtime, he was standing in my living room, calmly taking stock while Nicole tried to spin the situation. She claimed the items were shared property. But Hart reviewed the receipts, both purchases made before our marriage. That made them mine. Cornered, her face shifted from faux innocence to open frustration. She handed the items back. Then came the blame. She tried to flip the story, make me the villain. But the documentation was there. Her actions were recorded, literal and legal. As she walked out to her car, she turned to fire one last sharp look at me. A glare that made one thing obvious: this wasn't the end. That weekend, I needed a break. I drove a few hours south to celebrate my mother's birthday. Thought the distance might give me space to breathe. I left early Friday morning. When I came back Sunday night and turned into the driveway, I felt it immediately. Something was wrong. The garage door hung slightly ajar. Lights flickered on in rooms I hadn't used before I left. From the moment I walked in, the evidence was obvious. Empty liquor bottles were scattered across the kitchen counters. The guest room door was wide open, and the closet was crammed with clothing I didn't recognize. It was clear. Rowan had made himself at home. As I entered the living room, my stomach dropped. The television was gone. The bracket on the wall was empty. I checked the security system. The indoor cameras had been unplugged, cords dangling like limp vines. But the outdoor cameras were still running, and they had captured everything. On Saturday morning, Rowan had arrived in a pickup. Nicole stood beside him, arms folded, silently watching as he loaded my TV, my toolkit, and a duffel bag from the garage into the truck. I didn't confront them then. Instead, I called Officer Hart. By 9 that evening, he stood in my living room surveying the scene. "You said you wanted things to stay peaceful," he said, a trace of pity in his voice. "But they're not exactly giving you many options." About 20 minutes later, Nicole and Rowan showed up. "Relax, man," Rowan said. "We were just keeping your things safe while you were out." "Safe?" I asked, pulling out my phone and opening the video. There he was, clear as day, carrying my television to the back of his truck. Hart took one glance at the screen and shook his head. "That's not protecting property," he said. "That's theft." Under Hart's orders, Rowan had to return the TV. He grumbled the entire time. And when he brought back the espresso machine, he dropped it. The metal slammed against the pavement, and one of the handles snapped clean off. "That's damage to property," I said calmly, looking at Hart. "I saw it," he replied without hesitation. Whatever bravado Rowan had left dissolved then and there. No smirk this time, just angry, humiliated eyes as he set the broken machine down on the porch and walked away without another word. By Monday, I had everything compiled. Video clips, receipts, a detailed timeline, every piece in order. I sent it all to Vivian Cross, my attorney. She didn't hesitate. Vivian reviewed the file and confirmed we had Rowan trapped on every charge. Theft, false claims, vandalism. He hadn't even tried to cover his tracks. She assured me we could move forward with charges while keeping the divorce proceedings under seal. That very afternoon, she filed the necessary motions. Rowan was formally charged with theft and property damage. To avoid jail, he agreed to a plea, 18 months of probation and full repayment for everything he had taken or broken. But things didn't stop there. Just a week later, Vivian got a call from Rowan's previous landlord of all people. He'd heard about the case. Apparently, this wasn't the first time. Rowan had a pattern: move in with a girlfriend, overstay his welcome, and clean the place out once things soured. The landlord filed his own complaint, adding more weight to Rowan's growing legal troubles. At the same time, Nicole tried a new approach. She filed accusations of financial abuse, claiming I had cut her off and left her unable to support herself during the divorce. Vivian dismantled the claims easily. She presented documentation, my clean legal record, communication logs vetted by counsel, scheduled pickup dates, and proof that Nicole still had unrestricted access to shared finances. The judge wasn't convinced. Nicole's claims didn't hold up. When we left the courtroom, Nicole turned and shot me a glare sharp enough to wound. "You think this is a victory, Arthur?" she spat. "You're just making things worse for yourself." I met her stare without flinching. "No," I said. "I'm reminding you where the line is. You were the one who crossed it, Nicole, not me." Rowan said nothing. He kept his head low, silent as ever. For once, he had nothing to say. They showed up believing they could corner me into surrendering my own home. Yet it was their position that was collapsing, not mine. 6 weeks later, we stood before the judge for the final round. By that point, Rowan was already sinking, dealing with court-mandated payments and the weight of his probation. Nicole didn't carry herself like someone with the upper hand anymore. The edge in her posture had softened, replaced by visible fatigue. Vivian handled the courtroom like a master surgeon, methodical, composed, and precise. She pointed out that the house had been purchased years before I ever married Nicole. Every contested item, the power tools, the TV, was backed by receipts bearing my name. Nicole's attorney made one final attempt to secure spousal support, arguing that she had relied on me financially and now faced financial instability. Vivian didn't waver. She laid out the timeline. Nicole had filed for divorce while in the midst of an extramarital affair, and in our jurisdiction, adultery remained a valid reason to deny alimony. She also clarified that Nicole still had full use of her vehicle, access to personal funds, and even joint accounts right up to the morning of the hearing. The judge didn't need much time. His ruling was clear and concise. She'd leave with her car, her clothes, and a modest share of what remained in our combined savings. No spousal support, no claim to the house. That was it. A week later, Rowan made a mistake. He fired off a vague, thinly veiled threat via text, something about making me regret it once his probation ended. I sent it to Officer Hart immediately. Within hours, a violation report was filed. Rowan's leash got tighter. Nicole didn't stick around much longer. Within a few days, she had boxed up the last of her things and moved into a cramped apartment across town. That night, I turned the lock on the front door, and for the first time in ages, the house felt like it truly belonged to me again. That moment changed everything. They had come expecting to walk away with the prize, ready to stake their claim, justify their actions, and carve out pieces for themselves. In the end, they left with scraps. Once Nicole was gone, the quiet returned. Not the uneasy silence of tension, but the kind of calm that feels earned. No raised voices, no doors slammed in anger, just stillness. My days regained a steady rhythm. I went to work, came home, took walks as the sun dipped below the horizon, made simple dinners. To someone else, it might have seemed unremarkable. But after what I'd been through, that stillness felt like a personal victory. Peace doesn't always crash in like thunder. Sometimes it slips through the cracks and takes root in the silence. Nicole lost whatever leverage she thought she had. Rowan's bluster fell flat. And me? I gained something far more lasting than vengeance. Peace. That's what most people fail to understand. It was never about getting even. It was about holding a line and refusing to step back, no matter who tried to push me off it. The strongest response isn't always rage. Sometimes it's a locked door, a name on the deed, and the quiet resolve to wait until the noise burns itself out. I still live here, in this house, with the quiet I fought for and the clarity I earned,